have the pleasure to introduce our speaker, Conrad Zapanta. I'm gonna go with the long version, just spoiler alert. So Conrad earned his bachelor degrees in mechanical engineering with the option in biomedical engineering at Carnegie Mellon University in 1991, and earned his doctorate in bioengineering at Penn State University in 97. Dr. Zapanta was a visiting professor of engineering at Hope College in Holland. I don't know my states very well.
Michigan.
Michigan, there you go. Thank you. And Austin Community College in Austin, Texas. He was a faculty member at Penn State, where his research focused on cardiac assist devices for smaller adults and children. Dr. Zapanta also worked for Sussler's Carbomedics in the research and development of prosthetic heart valves. He has taught laboratory and design classes since joining CMU engineering faculty in 2006. He served as an associate department head for education in the biomedical engineering department from 2009 to 2022, where he supervised all phases of biomedical engineering curriculum. His research interests are in cardiovascular medical devices and biomedical engineering education. He has served in leadership roles for the American Society for Engineering Education, the American Society for Artificial and Internal Organs, on NIH panels, and a biomedical engineering program evaluator for ABET, which is why he was invited. He is a fellow in the Biomedical Engineering Society and the American Institute for Medical and Biological Engineering. Dr. Zapanta received the 2016 ASCE Biomedical Engineering Division Theo Pilkington Award for his significant contributions to biomedical engineering education, as evidenced by the developments of successful teaching programs, curricula, and publications. And Dr. Zapanta is currently a teaching professor in the Department of Biomedical Engineering and Associate Dean for Undergraduate Studies in the College of Engineering at CMU. So, welcome.
And thank you guys. Oh, sorry.
I will pass it to you now.
And thank you guys very much. And I see the for that warm introduction. So I want to make this as interactive as possible. So we do have a few people on here. So if you could quickly just say your name, where you're from, and what you know about ABET. Or how about this? We'll do word association. When I say the word ABET, what's the first thing you think of? And I'm going to start with Alexis.
Okay, so I'm Alexis Ortiz Rosario, Associate Professor of Practice, or whatever they're calling us these days, at Ohio State University. And the word association with ABET has to be stress. We're just leaving our ABET evaluation this yesterday, actually. So it was very stressful. I'll leave it at that.
Joseph, or Joe, do you mind going next?
Sure. I'm Joe Klaisner. I'm at Washington University in St. Louis. We're getting ready for ABET next year in 24. I would say it's documentation, because we're pulling together lots of documentation right now.
That's excellent. Mitchell, sorry.
Hi, my name's Mitchell. I'm a postdoc here at UC Irvine in Naomi Chesler's group. So I come from a math department, so ABET is very new to me, but it seems like a very important requirement to some departments. But I'm getting different opinions as I meet more people in BME. So yeah.
All right, Kayvon. Unless I might have lost you there. All right, we'll go with Carissa since you just got on. So you're basically saying, introducing yourself, and you'll appreciate this particularly. What's your word association with the word ABET?
All right, so I'm Carissa Tilray. I'm at the University of Maine. And word association with ABET. I think procedural.
Okay. I thought you were going to have a 4-letter bad word, but that's okay, Carissa.
Oh, well.
That's fine.
We'll keep it PC here.
Thank you. It's being recorded, remember?
It's recorded, so we don't want
to edit that. We'll have to bleep it out in the podcast. Scott, could you go ahead, please?
Sure. So I'm Scott Wood. I'm at South Dakota Mines, associate professor here in the Nanoscience and Biomedical Engineering Department. And I think we just went through our very first ever ABET accreditation for our new department. And yeah, so I would say I have 2 words, a lot.
I'll call that one word. That's fine. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Weeks. I'm at University of Maine. Word association for ABET, looming in the future.
Okay.
I have to write the report this coming few months.
Ominous.
Oh yes, that's a good word.
Nicole. Nicole, are you available? Or is she stumbling for the mute key? All right, while waiting for Nicole, Dr. Amos.
I would say quality.
You need to introduce yourself too.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Jenny, I thought everyone knew me. I'm Jenny Amos at University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign in bioengineering, and I'm an ABET commissioner.
And this is very intimidating for me because she is much more ABET-y than I am. ABET-y, it's the, yeah, actually ABET is a verb. It's a bet, but anyway. All right, so I should point out,
Nicole
actually,
is posting some, she wrote in the chat opportunity.
oh, she can't unmute, that's fine. Opportunity, very positive.
Professor
Nicole.
of Westchester University.
Thank you. All right, let me, did I do everybody? Did I miss anybody? Okay, it's not like I haven't done the Zoom teaching before, right? Did this once or twice. I should point out my connection with ABET. So I'm a program evaluator, and I'm also on the, and Jenny will correct me if I get this wrong, the Biomedical Engineering Society Activities Accreditation Activities Commission, which essentially part of that is we're the ones who recruit PEVs. Thank you, Jenny. Recruit PEVs, but also assign PEVs and also evaluate PEVs. So one thing I'll describe ABET, in a second, is a quality control system. We're the quality control system for the quality control system. So, all right, thank you for the word association. And this is where I must clarify the views and opinions expressed in these slides and in this presentation are those of Dr. Zapanta and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of ABET or Carnegie Mellon University. There, I have covered my butt. Leave that in the, and I do mean that in all sincerity. This is my opinions and my opinions alone. The nice thing about having Jenny here, we can, either corroborate each other's opinions, or she can say, "What the heck are you talking about, Conrad?" as well too. And I want to make this as interactive as possible. It's a small group. I have a whole bunch of slides, and totally fine if I don't get through all of them. So. All right, so what is ABET? And to prove I didn't plagiarize it or that ChatGPT did not write these slides, here's the link. So it used to be in the old days, why the heck is it called ABET? The Accreditation Board for Engineering Technology. So if you go way back, that's where the letters come from, but now we just call it ABET. So when you write out ABET, don't write out Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology. Very quickly accredits college and university programs in applied and natural science, computing, engineering technology at the associate, bachelor's, and master's degree levels. So we're actually going to concentrate on the bachelor levels here. I've actually never been I've never gone out and accredited associate or master degree programs, but there are a few of those as well too, especially for associate, the engineering technology programs. And there's slowly more master's degree programs getting accredited as well. Just stats where I pulled from the internet a few days ago, 4,674 programs at no more than 920 colleges and universities in 42 countries have received accreditation. And this means 175,000 students graduate from ABET accredited programs each year, and millions of graduates have received degrees from ABET accredited programs since 1932. So, and you're usually worrying about biomedical engineering, we all get lumped together under bioengineering, biomedical engineering, or similarly named programs. And 105 in the United States, 105 of these programs are in the US and 20 in other countries. So this I did not know until I did my research a few days ago. These are the countries, which I was not aware of these. And one thing to keep in mind and kind of hold on to this, if you are, now clearly there are BME programs, bioengineering programs that are not accredited. who are overseas, but this is not a bad place to start if you're looking for collaborators who are overseas. So do keep that on there. The one that surprised me, honestly, was Vietnam and Thailand. I was not aware that we had programs over there. Okay, China, I didn't see that one on the list, Nicole. So, I mean, in terms of getting accredited, probably establishing, right? All right, so why is it important? So here's something. There's something called the professional engineering exam. And part of that is that requirement minimum for a credential. So many of our students, well, some of our students, but particularly those in other disciplines like civil engineering or environmental engineering, have to pass a professional engineering exam. Part of that requirement for many states is that they must have graduated from an ABET accredited undergraduate level curriculum. Now, there is possible as a caveat to not have that that if you did not go to an ABET accredited undergraduate level institution, you have to show that your curriculum was equivalent to one that could be accredited. As you could imagine, that's an awful lot of paperwork, and that's on the student itself. So a little caveat there. That's want to make sure that if you ever get pushback from someone, oh, you can't get a PE unless you graduate from an ABET accredited undergraduate engineering curriculum, that is technically not true depending on the state. So, and I mentioned it's a quality control for engineering education through peer review. That's the way I put it. Because, you know, we love process as engineers, and we love process and control of the process, and that's what quality control is. All right, so what is being evaluated?
Conrad.
Oh, sorry, in the question, how many BMEs do a PE? And that's a great question. The ones I know of had, so let's back up a second. There is no BME professional engineering exam. So if BMEs do sit for it, they typically sit for mechanical or another type of exam. And this is where I'd be happy to unmute and let others share their experiences with the PE as well. Just curious, does anyone on this phone call have a PE? Just curious if any of you passed your fundamentals of engineering exam. So I did, right? Because Lisa, when did you take yours? Right after graduation?
It was a requirement of my undergrad that everyone had to take it and not pass, but a good faith attempt.
Okay.
So
Okay, so you got one, right? Okay, right. And so I got mine. So I'm old enough, it was still called the EIT, the Engineering and Training Exam. And I think I passed by literally 1 point. I'm just going to leave that out there. But engineering and training sounds so much worse than FE. So, all right, Christine, thank you for making it. I'm glad you're here.
So sorry about that.
Oh, no. Take care of family first. Take care of family first. All right. Let's go through the criteria now. So for those of you who have been through ABET before, an ABET accreditation visit, been through the process, this will be hopefully not triggering, or for the ones that are about to go through it or going through the process of writing a review. And for those of you who've never heard of it, it's something new. So call it lifelong learning. So there's a set of criteria known as the general criteria. Now the link here at the bottom has the letter as 2022 to 2023. Looking around, Ms. Virginia can correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't see any major differences between the criteria from this year and last year. So when you do go up, do make sure that you go through and make sure that the criteria, you're looking at the right criteria. The big shift, honestly, was from A through K for us older types to 1 to 7. And that took years and years and years, and a few more years after that, of comment and feedback and revision and things like that. So these don't change that often, but you know, do check just to make sure you're up to date. Now, on top of the general criteria that all programs must meet, there's program criteria, and this is for a specific discipline. I'll actually talk about the biomed ones in a second, but for instance, biomedical, bioengineering, and other similarly named programs, as they put it, has their own. Biological engineering, which people confuse us with sometimes, has their own. Material science has their own. Chemical, you get the idea. Civil as well. So So let's say for then your biomed programs that you're working with or bioengineering programs, you have the general criteria and then the program criteria. All right, here's some definitions you're going to hear all over the place, and we're going to try, these may come up through our discussions. You're going to have something called a concern. So a concern is something that after the PEV has gone through the review and the visit, they say that you have a concern on something or something. What that means is that the program currently satisfies some kind of criterion, policy, or procedure, but the potential exists for the situation to change such that the criterion, policy, or procedure may not be satisfied. So basically, an example would be for concern could be with faculty for growing programs. You have enough faculty now, but if you have enough faculty now to teach the students you have, but if you have a huge increase in number of students, you may not have enough faculty in the future. So that would be a concern. You're okay now, but something might change. A weakness is a statement that the program lacks strength of compliance with a particular criterion, policy, or procedure, and any remedial action is required to strengthen compliance with the criterion, policy, or procedure prior to the next review. So you're meeting it, your strength of compliance, like you could be kind of meeting it, but not really meeting it. And deficiency is that you're not meeting it. So these are typically after the visit, you will see the terms concern, weakness, or deficiency, but that is not shared till after the visit happened. So just kind of park those in the back of your minds. All right, well, let's go through the criterion. The first one is regarding students. You must evaluate student performance. You must monitor progress to foster success in attaining student outcomes, and therefore enabling graduates to attain program educational objectives. We'll talk about in a second. So are you monitoring student progress? How do you know they're attaining the outcomes you're doing, etc.? You must advise your students regarding both curriculum and career matters. So one thing I want to, again, this is where I'll insert my opinions, and Dr. Amos will be glad to jump in as well if necessary. So this line here, students must be advised regarding curriculum and career matters. This does not mean you need to have a staff person to be a full-time advisor. It also doesn't mean that you can't have one as well too. It just really means that you must be able to advise your students. To be fair, when the PEV comes to visit, you'll ask the students, how's the advising? Are you being advised regarding what classes to take, what job opportunities do you have following college, etc. And then you must have and enforce policies regarding transfer students, new students, awarding credit for courses taken at other institutions, and awarding proper academic work for work in lieu of courses taken at an institution. So that could be that bottom one. It could be an internship or something fulfills this requirement for something or something else. So, and then finally, you must have a procedure to ensure and document the students that graduate meet all of these requirements. What's your auditing system like? Do you have a checklist? How do you make sure that every student who graduates did indeed take the classes they were supposed to take? And we love this one, in the proper order, right? And just in case you're wondering and panicking, oh no, they're going to find out about that one student. As long as you document that one student, it's fine. So, there are always exceptions. A lot of stuff got, I don't say waived, but a lot of documentation happened during COVID, right? So even though you may have exceptions that you waived a prereq or you did a prereq in a different sequence or something like that, just make sure you have documentation about that. All right, any questions about students? Oh, and one thing I should put in here too, this is where transcripts become very important. So if you weren't aware, the way that ABET does is that ABET will request, I think it's 6 transcripts from a certain letter. And so let's say it's the letter L. So you choose 6 transcripts from the most recent cohort, and you provide those transcripts. And then ideally, if you'll help out the PEV figure out, and we go with these later, you know, here are the transcripts, here's how to interpret the transcripts, here's our check sheets. And in case there are any exceptions for the student, here are the documentation for that as well. Christine.
Yeah, sorry, I had a question. Because we have like a huge transfer policy where we have tons of transfers. How do you balance like modularity, allowing them to come in and take things a little off sequence versus having to follow that appropriate timeline? Because I feel like that's something we're struggling with.
And I think that that's a great question. You know, the exception becomes the rule, Christine, right? So I think the big thing is, do you have a policy, number one? And maybe your policy is to be very flexible and you offer all these things. But I would say if I was the PEV, and again, my opinion coming in, and I see more exceptions than people following the rule, then I would have to worry a little bit.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So you have to balance it, make sure it's not like exceptions all the time, but
And that's
rather
right.
it's
And
built
maybe-
in to be modular, I guess.
Right. And I guess, you know, and, you know, that'd be something we can chat offline or a little bit as well. But I think, you know, that would be, you know, so I would make the case, if you're having a lot of exceptions, perhaps you need to change your policy.
Got it.
Jenny, do you want to have any comments on that?
We were actually just talking about this on our campus. We also have a large transfer system in Illinois, and it's all documentation, right? We have articulation agreements, and so that's held somewhere on the transcript. It tells you what transfers, what doesn't. So that's really all it comes down to, is do you have the documentation to explain why? If it was a one-off substitution, oh, this student has some content, we want to do a waiver. Is there documentation of how that decision's made? So I would say it's all just about documentation, because you know they're going to pull the nightmare transcript that you don't want them to. They're going to pull it, and then you have to have the documentation to show why that student took what in what order, and then you're good. It's, if you have documentation, they're not really going to question it.
But I would say that, thank you, Jenny. And I would actually say, you know, with some sarcasm, if there's that certain, and we all know who the letters are, right? And who the challenging students are. Start, if you're religious, start, you know, whatever. If you're religious or not religious, you may want to become religious and start praying and hoping and wishing those letters don't get chosen. Because I'm in charge of the quick side of, I'm in charge of our visit in fall 2024 here at CMU. And I know that there are letters that I don't want to touch. So we'll leave it at that. Other questions? All right. And I'm going to move a little bit faster now. So program education objectives. These are from the ABET definitions, essentially broad statements that describe what graduates are expected to attain within a few years of graduation. And these are based on the needs of the program's constituencies. So broadly speaking, the program must have published program of educational objectives, otherwise fondly known as PEOs, that are consistent with the mission of the institution, the needs of the program's constituencies, and these criteria. And you must be a documented, systematically utilized, and effective process involving the constituencies again for reviewing these periodically, ensure they remain consistent with the mission of the institution, the program's constituents, and these criteria. So the big summary from this is that the institution gets to decide what the graduates are expected to know. And the key word is within a few years after graduation, not when they graduate. This is the few years after graduation. And also you get to choose your constituencies. That being said, if you choose your constituencies, make sure they can actually evaluate your PEOs. So don't say society. That's a hard one to kind of like to bring them back. But for instance, alumni are typical ones you see. It could be industry, it could be graduate school, it could be you know, any things like that. Faculty or students could be on there. Some debate whether to put them on. The big thing, it is up to the individual programs to define these things, and you got to have a system for periodically reviewing these. This is where documentation is a big thing. Let's bring this up again. Do document that your constituencies actually evaluated them. Now, they don't need to change them, but there needs to become something systematically and document. Big thing you're going to see where is the word systematic. Doing it once is not systematic. Now, do keep in mind that for all the programs that either just came up or about to come up, or maybe even come up in a year or two, COVID disrupted everything. So, you know, if something happened there that didn't get done in its usual timely manner, you can say that as well. You do not have to assess these, and that's a big thing that people forget. You don't need to assess the outcomes. You just need to have them, and you need to have constituencies. Excuse me, the objectives, not the outcomes. You need to have them, have constituencies, and have a way of reviewing them in a systematic manner. Questions? All right, Mitchell, sorry, I have to jump off. All right, student outcomes. All right, so these are different than PEOs, which are program educational objectives. Student outcomes are also known as SOs. This is what they're supposed to know when they graduate. Relates to skills, knowledges, and behaviors that they acquire as they progress through your program. And so you must have documented outcomes that support the objectives. And then the important thing, you get these, attain these outcomes, and then they go into the practical world of engineering. So typically these are outcomes 1 through 7. You must have 1 through 7. And then some programs choose to do additional outcomes as well, too. All right, so let's go through these. Identify, formulate, and solve complex engineering programs by applying principles of engineering, science, and math. And the big thing is that somewhere in your program, you should have some place where students identify, formulate, and solve complex engineering problems. So this is a little bit of a, based on my experience as a PEV and doing a side consulting bit on the side to help other programs. We're looking for, as evaluators, identify, formulate, and solve. Now, they all don't need to be the same problem, or all don't need to be in the same class, just somewhere in the curriculum as well. And I think one that you're going to hear a little bit about as well is opinions are like belly buttons. Everyone has one. I can say that, and I think I'm pretty sure about that. You know, it's the you're going to hear something about best practices, and you know, oh, you should do this for ABET, you should do this, et cetera, et cetera. It's really up to you, to the program, to define how you do these things, but you definitely, in this case, identify, formulate, and solve. Engineering design. So an ability to meet engineering design to produce solutions that meet specified needs with consideration of public health, safety, and welfare, as well as these factors: global, cultural, social, environmental, and economic. So a question that comes up for this one, and for number 4, we'll get to in a second: do you need to address everything in the commas? And my current thing is say that, you know, I think it is possible to, as students are going through the curriculum, perhaps as they're evaluating a design process, to say, have you considered these things in there? Now, do keep in mind that every project may not involve environmental and global factors or cultural, but they have to be considered at least. So I've been on visits where it's been evaluated holistically, and I've been on visits where every single comma needs to be evaluated as well. What can I tell you is I've seen both. I've seen both. Nicole. That hand shut up real fast, Nicole.
All right, let's see. No, I was actually going back to outcome 1. Could you talk a little bit about the complexity of engineering problems?
And actually, it's, you know, I'm trying to recall now, because I didn't pull it up. Jenny, there is a definition of complex engineering problem, and Jenny can.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it and put it in the chat.
Okay, but there is a definition of that, Nicole. When was your visit, Nicole, or is it happening now?
3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Also seems like a lifetime ago, but yes, 3 weeks ago.
Okay. But there is a definition of complex engineering problem. So.
Yeah, we were just wondering, like, what levels rises to the level of complexity, and yeah, the formative versus summative of complex problems.
So let's do it right here. It has involved at least one of these things, right? Wide-ranging or conflicting technical issues, have no, and thank you for cutting and pasting, having no obvious solution, addressing problems not encompassed by current standards or codes, involving diverse groups, many parts, multiple discipline, significant consequences. So they're not simple. How about that, Nicole? So now, you know, the thing is, it is up to the program to tell the evaluator how they consider something to be complex or not, based on this definition. So, and one thing I should mention here, so ABET does not accredit departments. ABET accredits programs. Because, for instance, I've worked with some programs, so, and I think there's some on this call as well, a biomed program maybe housed in a chemical engineering department, right? Or it's chemical and biomedical engineering. So ABET does not accredit both so the ABET, there'll be a separate ABET evaluator for chemical and a separate evaluator for biomedical. So one evaluator does not evaluate both the entire department. So do keep that in mind, that they're very nuanced in saying program and not department. So just keep that with a heads up. All right. Communicate effectively with a wide range of audiences, and this is where the program gets to decide what's a wide range of audiences. So physics and engineering, right? That could be one as well, Nicole. And actually, there's an example where that would be two different commissions: natural science and then engineering. So nice to see your microphone works too, Nicole. An ability to recognize ethical and professional responsibilities in engineering situations and make informed judgment, which consider the impact of engineering solutions in global economic, environmental, societal context. Kind of addressed that a little bit previously, but these are engineering solutions. And I want to point back, the other one is engineering design. So, you know, that's the way I interpret it when I work with my programs, solutions versus designs. But keep in mind, again, a lot of these are ones with commas as well, too. So think about how in your classes, for instance, a capstone class, you would be looking at this. And thank you. And there's also a definition of engineering design. So a question came up here, actually, which is an interesting question. Could research count as engineering design? And the answer is engineering design, whatever you're going to call engineering design, has to fit this one. So a question did come up once, could an AI project meet this? And then the answer was not necessarily no, is if you structure the class, your capstone design project, whatever it may be, does it fit these definitions? So, and again, it's up to the program to demonstrate that it does. The ability to function effectively on a team whose members together provide leadership, create collaborative, inclusive environments, establish goals, plan tasks, and meet objectives. The ability to develop and conduct experimentation, analyze and interpret data, and use engineering judgment to draw conclusions. So analyze and interpret data is very important. That's one thing we've seen. And then making conclusions as well. So I actually, yes, I use CATME for 5. And there's actually quite some stuff you can pull from that. And honestly, there's also those extra questions about inclusive environments, things like that as well, too. Now, one thing that CATME doesn't do, obviously, is how do you plan tasks? How do you meet objectives? You know, you could pull out some other parts of that as well, too. I met Matt Olin once. Actually, I take it back. I met him, but I also was visiting Purdue. And yes, I took a picture. He wasn't in his office that day, but I took his picture of his office. I was totally fanboying that day. Totally. It was creepy. People were wondering what I was doing. Yes. So the big thing with data is analyze, interpret data, use engineering judgment. conduct appropriate experimentation. So, one way to potentially address number 6, and especially you're wondering if you do, a lot of labs we do in some classes are not open-ended. As part of your design class, perhaps what I do for my design class, and again, this is my opinion, I have them run tests based on, to test out whatever solutions they came out for capstone design. You can do a lot with that one right there. And then finally, acquire and apply new knowledge as needed using appropriate learning strategies. And the key word is appropriate. And again, up to the program to define that as well. So these are student outcomes 1 through 7. Every program must meet these. You are free to add if you wish. And some programs will actually make up their own student outcomes. But then if you choose to do that, you must show that your student outcomes for your program must, you have to overlay that with the student outcomes 1 through 7 to show that components are in there as well. Honestly, you could do that, but I think going through 1 through 7 is totally fine. Totally fine. Questions on 1 through 7? All right, continuous improvement. Here's the fun one where some people were starting to, I know, get a little googly-eyed. The program must regularly use appropriate documented process for assessing and evaluating the extent to which the outcomes are being attained. So this is where a lot of that documentation comes in. Appropriate documented process for assessing and evaluating to extent which the student outcomes are being attained. And then you do these evaluations, and then you complete the proverbial loop. Must be systematically utilized as input for the program's continuous improvement action. Do you use the results from the evaluation that you have processes for to then decide how to make changes, if any? And you must have other information as well. So it's one of the shortest ones, but one of the biggest components of your study, of your self-study, of the documentation you're providing. Now, we could have a whole lecture or two just based on types of evaluation processes. There are a lot of ones out there. For those who are fairly new to the process, I think, shameless plug for ABET. They have many workshops where they go in and talk about these things. ASEE, I think, tends to have some workshops as well too. BMES used to a long time ago, and we don't do that so much anymore. I know, Jenny, you had a panel on Friday that was more overall, right? Not necessarily, did a lot of, how did that go? You found people showed up?
Yeah, we actually had a pretty decent crowd. I think it went well.
ABET always scares people, right? I mean, ABET always encourages people to document their process and be open, and, scare is a bad term, motivates the proper term, All right, let's go to curriculum. There are curricular requirements regarding subject areas. They say which they're appropriate, but they don't say which courses you have to take. Now, the program curriculum must have adequate content for each area, consistent with the outcomes and PEOs to ensure the students are prepared to enter the practice of engineering. And here's the must include right here. 30 semester hours, or the equivalent of a combination of college level math and basic sciences with experimental experience appropriate to the program. So college level math, that means calc and higher. So I do know, for instance, a lot of programs have, pre-calc, and perhaps helping students who don't have the math background yet, or perhaps need a refresher before they take calculus. That's great, but you can't count that as college level math, unfortunately. Yes, there is. There's definitions for everything on the ABET website. Nicole, you should be considered. Well, no, I give the PEV plug later, so we'll go to that in a second. So, and that's the thing. Any definitions, the ABET website is chock full of definitions. Now, here's the fun one: 45 semester credit hours or equivalent of engineering topics appropriate to the program consisting of engineering, computer science, and engineering design, and utilizing modern engineering tools. So a little bit thing with engineering based on my experience. So computer science counts as an engineering course, not a science course. This is actually a common thing where biomed, some engineering disciplines don't have enough science. So electrical and computer perhaps is the ones I've seen that run up against this. Biomed doesn't have that problem because we have a lot of biological classes, chemistry, et cetera. Now, what I've run into, interestingly enough, is a biotransport class an engineering class, or is it a science class? And I've seen some battles on both sides with that. And again, it was up to your PEV to kind of demonstrate that. I mean, so one thing is, if you make it all engineering, could you make it all engineering, have a little bit of science, you're probably okay. But if it's a heavy on the hardcore cell bio with not much engineering, then that's probably going to raise a red flag. The safe way I've seen is some people will count half science and half engineering, right? It is up to the individual program evaluator. The way I kind of look at it is that it'd be hard to have a biomed class without any kind of biology or chemistry or science behind it. But I think there is a level to which that could dominate the entire class. And then I mentioned slide number 2, where these are my opinions and my opinions alone, which is now why I'm going to ask for Jenny's opinion.
This came up at the session at BMES, actually, and we talked about you are allowed to split, it doesn't have to be, if it's a 3-hour course, it's 3 in one bucket or the other. You can do 1 and 2 or 2 and 1. So yeah, I think it's just, your judgment. Anywhere where you feel like the course is meeting one of the 1 through 7, you're doing engineering, right? That's why those are the engineering outcomes. So if you're applying it to a problem in order to be able to design and solve, you're doing engineering. So that's how I interpret it.
Right. And again, Jenny and I this is our interpretation. So, one thing to keep in mind is that, and I'll talk about how the whole visit happens later, even if we're sitting as the program evaluator in the meeting with the rest of the team, we voice our opinion, but we are also voicing our opinion with a bunch of other evaluators from other programs at the same time as well. So we have to be able to justify our answers. So. A broad education component that complements the technical program. We all have general education and various requirements, and various schools have different ones. That's great. And then here's the big one. There must be a culminating major engineering design experience that incorporates appropriate engineering standards and multiple constraints, and is based on knowledge and skills acquired in earlier coursework. So one thing I will say now is appropriate engineering standards. So no engineering standards is bad. No engineering standards is bad. If nothing else, ISO, ASTM. I have some debate, and Jenny, feel free to jump in. I've had some programs say, well, these are the FDA requirements, so those are standards. There's some debate whether I call FDA standards or not, but then I will push a little more and say, are you sure there aren't any ISO or ASTM standards or things like that? So my personal experience for my capstone design class, when they have to go off and start making experiments to test their prototypes, I say pull the ISO or ASTM standard, develop an experiment based on that, and that covers a lot of that right there. But standards, if I recall, I'm not going on any visits this year, and Nicole, I don't mean to trigger you, but I think and Jenny, are you going out this year on any visits? You're a team chair.
Yeah, I'm team chairing next week.
Okay, so my condolences. And yes, that's the one that FDA uses an awful lot. So if nothing else, you could probably put that in there somewhere. Where was I going with this? I think now that as part of what you have to prepare as your self-study, a list of all the capstone projects, right? And I think that's right, list of all capstone projects. And we were just doing our draft studies here at CMU. I'm encouraging all of them not only list the projects, list the standards that each project used, so it's easy to find. All right, that's curriculum. So one thing with curriculum that went back earlier to monitoring student progress, if you want to make your PEV's life easy, and I don't want to say your whole goal is to make your PEV life easy, but you do want to make them happy to some degree, right? Be able to use to show really easy, create some kind of curriculum map or something, or a flow chart or sheet that helps the PEV interpret the transcripts would be greatly, greatly, greatly appreciated. We spend a lot of times, I enjoy going through transcripts in a really weird way. I don't know if Jenny considers that as well, but it really helps you learn the program. But I think that's something just to, that if you can help and especially some transcripts are strange. For instance, some schools they'll say, here's the transfer class, but they don't say what it counts for, or something like that. That would be something that you should document somewhere. And this is your opportunity if you have, those students that have the prereq waivers or they transferred in or something like that, to explain all that as well too. And thanks for answering that, Jenny, online. All right, faculty. You must demonstrate that you have enough faculty members and they have the competence to cover all the curricular areas of the program. And then you also have to cover advising, counseling, service activities, professional development, and employers of students as well. And they must be qualified, demonstrate sufficient authority to ensure proper guidance of the program. So that's an interesting one I've seen. It's like, basically, does the faculty have the power to basically add classes, delete classes, are they in control of the curriculum itself? I've never actually seen that as a problem before, but just something that I thought of as we're going through there. And then finally, implement processes for the evaluation, assessment, and continuing improvement of the program. And this is some things to look at: education, diversity of backgrounds, experience, effectiveness, communicate, enthusiasm, scholarship, participation, licensure as PEs, et cetera, et cetera. So do you have enough faculty, and are they qualified, and how do you document this? This is where you get the exciting part of convincing, and especially if you're in a larger department, convincing all the faculty to submit those 2-page CVs. Something that it can be a challenge, but you also do need to get those as well too. So this could be an example I mentioned earlier about, do you have enough faculty, for instance, in that concern, to basically, do you have enough faculty to teach your program, but do you have the right faculty to cover all your classes as well too? All right, facilities. You must have classrooms, offices, laboratories, and associated equipment must be adequate to support attainment of the outcomes. Provide an atmosphere conducive to learning. Modern tools, equipment, computer resources, labs appropriate to the program must be available, accessible, and systematically maintained and upgraded to enable students to obtain the student outcomes support program needs. So this is one thing that we'll talk about the visit in a few slides that we will come through, definitely take a look at, is the lab facilities. And we'll talk to the students about the lab facilities. In my ideal world, I like to be able to watch the students actually run a lab, just to see how things are going and things like that. But ironically, none of the classes are available on the days I visit. What does that tell you? But in all seriousness, like for instance, modern tools, computing resources, equipment, basically, do you have the things you need? And is it upgraded? How do you pay for it? Is it safe to use? Things like that as well. I mentioned appropriate, so training is important of guidance and things like that. So how do you train people to use the lathes? How do you teach them to use a fume hood? How are they taught to work in a BSL2 lab or something like that? The library is important. And so I think, so Nicole, good point, lab safety, right? Now we'll cover that in a second as well. That's actually part of the APPM, the Accreditation Procedures and Policies Manual. I think I got that right, or some variation thereof. Jenny's not giving me the side eye, so it must be close enough for APPM. But yeah, safety is a big deal, Nicole. That's one thing that even when I visited, I had a visit over COVID, I made someone walk around with their cell phone in like the lab and say, all right, go to over there. No, the other over there. No, over there. And I was looking to see the inspection sticker on a biological hood, right? Or the expiration date on the fire extinguisher or something like that. Or show me which drawer or how the MSDS are available or things like that. So do keep that in mind. That's things that we will definitely go around and touch and feel. So one thing to throw in here about training as well, makerspace areas that a lot of people use. Make sure that one thing that we do look for, are they safe? Are they trained to use the equipment? One thing that came up during one of my visits, 3D printers. They are going to have exhaust. How is that vented? How is that taken care of? Things like that as well. Oh, the library is important. Computational information structure. So the comment, about our library doesn't have the ISO standards, but if you can get them through the library alone, that's fine. If they couldn't get them at all, then I'd be more worried about that. One thing for library for biomed programs that I look for is access to Medline, PubMed, medical journals, biological journals, things like that. And again, even if your library doesn't subscribe to them, can you get them through your library alone or something like that? All right, institutional support. Basically, the institution better darn well support you, both financial and the leadership must support you as well. This could include financial support, staff, institutional services. Do you have enough? You must be able to attract, retain, and provide to continual professional development of the faculty. So it's one thing just not to have faculty, it's also important to retain as well. So a red flag could be potentially is that you've been having a faculty search for every 2 years for the same position, or people aren't sticking around, or things like that. Nicole.
So I was really torn on our recent visit, like how honest to be with our PEVs about like lack of support for certain things. So So honestly, this is my opinion. I would like you to be honest, because then, if the faculty feel this way, we report our findings to the institution. So no, I do think this is an opportunity, and this is, this is being recorded, but refer to slide number 2, my opinions, where some programs do use this as an opportunity to get more program support. Yeah, I was trying to find the line between advocating for ourselves and not like being the reason that we, got a concern or we did something.
And I think the PEVs, are also going to be aware of that as well. But let's say, for instance, this is something that they're hearing from a bunch of different programs, and the associate dean comes out and says that as well too during a meeting, right? Now, this could be a little bit different than Nicole saying they always give me 8 a.m. classes. I don't know why. Now that's another issue we probably could discuss later, right? But it's so I don't want to use the word weaponize the self-study, but a term I like to use, it is an opportunity for programs to express that they need additional support. And I have seen that happen. And I've seen that.
Yeah. And for the sake of recording, strictly hypothetical, just
strictly hypothetical
question.
Offline, I can tell some really good war stories that I haven't experienced, but I have heard, and I'm sure Jenny could as well. So. And back to that, the resources available to the program must be sufficient to acquire, maintain infrastructure, facilities, equipment, and provide the environment. So along those lines, it's great that you've bought that great piece of equipment for the teaching lab. How are you maintaining it? How are you training? Are you paying someone to support it? Things like that. So in instances where it could be not sufficient, to say, Nicole, what's your favorite piece of test equipment you have in the lab or something?
Are you asking?
Yeah, I'm asking. This is
we
hypothetical.
have like ADMET universal testing machines.
Okay, so you're a TS, right? So it'd be great, but let's say that no one was trained on how to use it. No one was really responsible for taking care of it, or perhaps it was you, but you're also responsible for taking care of 5 other things, and you're full teaching load and advising. That, and there's no money provided. That would be a big deal. That would be a big deal. All right, so that's institutional support. Thank you, Jenny. So Jenny's off now, so we can talk about Jen. Okay, that's good. Sorry, I said that out loud. Few minutes left. Let me get this to this really quickly. APPM, basically this is other stuff to do quickly. Accreditation status must be represented ambiguously. So don't, I've actually seen programs who say they're accredited and they're not. That's a big no-no. That's a big no-no. You must, if you are accredited, so honestly, if you're not accredited yet, don't put anything on there yet that you're accredited. Even saying that you're going to be accredited, that's a little dicey, I would say. But if you are accredited, make sure all these stuff are online. PEOs, SOs, enrollment, graduation data. Programs name must meet ABET requirements. And this is important for the foreign schools. You must be in English. Documentation must be in English. Interesting, all paths in a curriculum are accreditable, even if you have different, so for instance, you have tracks or focus areas, make sure there's enough math, science, engineering taken on all those tracks as well too. Make people, appropriate individuals during the visit. So when I go visit, I like to talk to senior faculty, junior faculty, I like to talk to students, I like to talk to staff, especially the staff that support the advisors, if it's faculty advisors, or if there's a staff advisor, talk to the staff advisor as well too. Now, so hypothetically, let's say you have a faculty member who may not be as cooperative, perhaps, as you may anticipate during the visit. They just may happen to not be available for an interview. Not saying I would do that, but just throwing that out there as a hypothetical. Nicole, you mentioned this already. Facilities adequate and safe for intended purposes. So safety. That's really emphasized on that as well. And the supporting materials, in the old days, you ever been through the visits in the old days, this was the big room full of all the notebooks and everything, and the textbooks and the projects. You can still have some of those, but there's something called digital now. Actually, it's now expected. The timeline is a little bit up and down as to when to be expected to provide those materials before they come, so they can focus on, your PEVs can focus on different things when they arrive. All right, so let's wrap up strategic scheduling. Thank you. I like that. There happened to be at a conference, right? So these are the program criteria for the biomed programs. Breadth and depth. The curriculum must provide breadth and depth across the range of engineering topics consistent with the PEOs and student outcomes. So you, the program, decide what's breadth and what's depth. The reason a lot of programs do depth through the different options you can choose, like biomechanics or medical devices or tissue engineering or biomaterials, or some have required depth. We're all required to take a bioinstrumentation sequence as part of required courses. It's really up to and I've also seen depth in some science classes. So it's really up to the program to decide how to do that. But you must include experience in the following: apply principles of engineering, biology, physiology, chemistry, calc, math, through differential equations and statistics, solve biomedical engineering problems, and my fun one, the interaction between living and non-living systems, analyze, model, design, realize biomedical devices, systems, component, or processes, and all those are important. Analyze, model, design, and realize. You don't need to do it all in the same class, but must be done in the curriculum somewhere. And then making measurements on and interpret data from living systems. Living systems is very broad. Images, so one question always comes up with this one: could a series of MRIs from a patient count? And the answer is yes, because the patient was living at the time. Histology slides could also, because it's coming from a living system. If it was all synthetic, that's when I would scratch my head and be concerned. So, and do keep in mind for these program criteria, you don't have to assess these. You just must show that it's in the curriculum somewhere. So remember, for student outcomes, you have to assess and provide documentation. These you do not need to. You could choose to do it, but you don't need to. And Nicole, most programs don't assess these, Nicole. Now, you can make the case you could internally assess these, but not report it, which that is, I think, a best practice. So by best practice, meaning that you could do that, because I think there is benefit in assessing these, but you don't need to report that to ABET. Carissa.
All right, so these can be also, because they're not assessed necessarily, they can be options that students have in the form of technical electives, or it must be part of the core curriculum?
Good question. So every student must experience it. So if, for instance, so the easiest way is through the core, right? But so for instance, but then let's say the deaf, there has to be deaf somewhere. So that could be the track. So clearly they could be, so a good example there is that you could be assessing some of these in your optional, in the different options, right? Like biomaterials, biomechanics, etc. And they could look different for each one, right? But you might have to make sure you're addressing them. So the core is the easiest way to do it, because if you do it in the optional tracks, I can't remember if you guys have tracks, in the options or whatever. So you got to make sure the big thing, you got to make sure all the students have it.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
you're welcome. Nicole.
Sorry, I have one more thing just to save other people from the same issue. So the measurements and interpreting data from living systems. So we had students like do EMG, ECG labs as part of a lab course, but then they had like a poster session where they shared with the rest of the department the results of what they did, and they wanted us to get IRB approval for that. So just keep in mind that yes.
So then now how you just
because it's generalizable knowledge, you're disseminating it.
You're presenting it outside of the class.
I was going to say, right, if you stuck to a lab report in the class, you wouldn't have been in trouble.
Yep. But we shared it with other faculty
as like that's a good one.
Okay, so just as an FYI, if you're planning on doing something beyond the class, it might be useful to loop in your IRB.
Or just, be closed-minded, Nicole, and don't tell anyone else about what you're doing. How dare you share your stuff with the rest of the university? Right?
Yeah, we shot ourselves in the foot by giving students another opportunity for communicating with multiple audiences. We were like, oh yeah, outcome 3 too. Nope.
Nope, bad idea. Right.
Shot in the foot.